You can't put a price on the memories and the things that you've done and your family history and time spent with loved ones. And I know for me as a mom, and I'm sure our listeners would agree, that in this phase of life, you see how fast it all goes. And if you could just have a moment to go back to that time when your kid was little at the Christmas tree and opening up the whatever it was, or getting the cookies for Santa, or just snuggling up on your lap, so you curating those things and putting it in a way that's accessible for people is really, really quite a gift. It really is something special. What a cool thing that you're bringing.
Thank
To
you.
people.
Yeah, it really is great. And I have to say, it's so much easier for someone else to curate your stuff than you. I mean, my husband and I went to Cuba and Mexico City for 3 weeks at the end of 2015. And when I got back, it was his iPhone, my iPhone, and a camera. I took a camera with me. And it was so overwhelming. I was like, I don't know which one of these photos I want to keep. So I literally put one of my employees on it. I'm like, I don't know, you curate for me. It's just so much easier. You get caught in the memory and oh my God, I remember that particular, but yeah, it's much easier
True.
for someone else to do it.
You know what? To your point, that's so true, because number one, we go away, and Lynn and our family has been going on trips. We take our kids, our husbands, we all go on a big trip in the summer. We've been doing it for years. And I come home with, first of all, why do I take 4 and 5 pictures of the exact same,
Everything.
like me and the kids? There's 5 pictures for me to choose from. Why did I do that? Because then I can't decide which one's better. And secondly, I take pictures of landscape and monuments and whatever, like I'm a professional photographer, and none of it looks as good as I think it does. And then after the fact, what are you doing with it anyway? So to be able to send that off to somebody and I can actually go back and revisit those in a good way. Otherwise, they just sit and take up space on my phone, frankly.
Absolutely.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke, and normally this would be where Dr. Lynn would say, and I'm Dr. Lynn, but unfortunately she's not joining us today. She had something come up, but I'm going to be here with a very special guest. Her name is Haleh Shoa. Did I say that right, Haleh? I said it wrong.
You
No?
did. It's
Okay?
Haleh. No, you did.
Okay, Haleh Shoa. I cannot wait for this lady to share her wisdom and everything that she's doing and what she has to offer women and moms like us, because I think this could be a real game changer. Before we get to the conversation, let me just give you a little bit of Haleh's background. She is the founder and CEO of a company called Picturely, which is a photo organization, curation, archiving, and design studio that helps families, individuals, and businesses transform their photo mess into one sortable digital library. I mean, guys, come on, who doesn't need that? I know I do. Haleh and her team meticulously organize the client's entire photo collections into a sortable and searchable photo archive that is secure and easily shareable. She firmly believes that our family history and our personal memories are some of our most valuable treasures, and that preserving and sharing them is essential for future generations. I am so excited for this conversation, honestly. And I shared with you just a little bit on our pre-call that I moved. And most of our listeners know this because I shared it, but I moved last May, and sorting through my storage room was a disaster and a nightmare, and a little bit like anxiety ridden too. So I'm excited to have this conversation. So before we jump into all the things, share just your story behind Picturely. What inspired you to start the business, or anything else you'd like us to know about you? Let's start there.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well. My story is actually a conjunction of kind of 2 or 3 different things that have happened in my own life. When I was 9 years old, my family found themselves in the middle of the Iranian Revolution.
Wow.
And with that, they really weren't able to bring anything with them. So my mom, in her wisdom, decided to pack all the memories and some of the family heirlooms, some old books and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's all we left with. So we had to leave everything behind, and I haven't asked my parents this, but I'm wondering if they were able to sell their stuff, or did they just leave their stuff? But because I was so young and it was such mayhem. But so we left with that, and cut to, I'm in my mid-20s and I'm working in advertising, and it sort of ebbs and flows in advertising. Either you're really busy or you're not. And when I wasn't that busy, I would bring the family photos into our studio and start scanning them high res. And at that time, there was email. And so I would start emailing them to my family who were in 4 different continents. And they were so elated to be able to see these old photos come to life. And so I sort of like it was that coupled with the fact that I always had a camera in my hand, and I was always taking family photos, and I was making photo books with family photos for my immediate family and for my friends. I'm a heart mom, so I didn't have my own
Hmm.
kids, but all my best friends had kids, and so I would make calendars for them.
Wow.
So it was like all these things. Like I really loved dealing with photos. So in 2016, when I started working with a life coach, and she kept saying, "Well, what do you love doing?" I was like, "You know what? I love making photo books." So it was like all of those things coming together for me to really start Picturely, and that's sort of the founder story.
That is an incredible story to share. And there's a couple of things that I love there. Number one, just, I mean, that must have been so hard for you at the age of 9, and certainly your parents to have to pick up and leave. I mean, I can't even imagine. And it's always amazing for me to see the beauty that can come from things like that. I mean, you maybe would not have started Picturely had you not had that experience and known firsthand how important all those things were that you were able to bring with you. So that's
Absolutely.
unbelievable. And two, I think it's really interesting, and it's a great. I want to talk more about Picturely and what we can do to sort the things that we have since our kids are grown. Most of the women listening, they've got kids that are grown, but there's something to be said here in a conversation to have around figuring out what you want to do with your life now, right? And as you mentioned, you were working, and actually you're working with some pretty big brands. I think you mentioned like you did advertising. You were global with was it Range Rover? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, I was my last full-time job. I was the
Yeah.
director of operations globally for Jaguar Land Rover.
Yep.
And what that entailed is really I was in charge of managing all the assets. So
Yep.
all the assets that were taken for the commercials, both for print and video, film stuff. And I have an expertise when it comes to managing sort of assets. And if I were to tell the average family, "Oh, I'm a digital asset manager," they're not going to understand what that means. But if I
No.
say, "I can organize your photos," it's really the same thing. It's really managing their assets, right?
Yep.
And it's the assets that we can't replace. If our photos, God forbid, if something happens to where you guys live, fire, flood, whatever it is, and you don't have that stuff scanned, that's gone. And
Yeah.
conversely, if you don't have your digital assets backed up, and you drop your phone or your computer crashes, or there's some type of a failure with the external hard drives that you have your items on, that also is gone forever, which is really devastating. So
Yep.
we make sure that we teach our family, our clients, how to preserve and really safeguard everything.
Yep. You know what? And that it's so true. And not only from a case of a situation like a disaster, like a fire or something like that, and all those things you mentioned, I know firsthand. My husband and I, his mother, unfortunately passed away like 7 years ago, and my husband was an only child. It was We adored her, so it was very, very difficult. And
Hmm.
amidst of everything else that we were dealing with, going through her house was one thing, but going through all the containers of pictures and albums and all of these things, what a nightmare that was. I mean, it was nice to see all of it, but also we're dealing with the trauma of losing her,
Yeah.
dealing with the kids and focusing with them, and then also trying to figure out, A, we don't know who half the people are in the pictures, and B, what are we going to do with all of them? Like, we're in a different state. Are we bringing them back here? Are we keeping them? Do we have room to store them? So I think it's important even for us to think ahead of those types of things too. Like, what kind of a legacy do we want, not only for ourselves to have things organized, but what are we leaving to our kids too someday, right? I just think those
Absolutely.
things are so important. So it's a
Yeah.
great service you're providing. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've had many clients who come in here with their bins or send us their bins,
Mm-hmm.
and they go, "You know what?" And we do a little Zoom video, FaceTime kind of call with them to say, "Okay, who are these people?" And they're like, "We don't know." And we get a lot of people whose family members, the elders, die, and they go, then they sort of start to go through it, sort of like your experience. And these people look like you, but you don't know who they are. It could be that parent's cousin, first cousin that, you don't know their names. And it's really unfortunate when that happens. But I do give permission to all my clients to be able to let go of those memories and not hold on to them. If they don't know
Mm.
who they are, um, I give them permission to throw that away because, I mean, of course they could keep it or they could donate some of the photos, especially if they're really old. There's a
Yep.
lot of flea markets that sort of sell old photos for decorations. Um, but yeah, it's devastating when someone goes and you don't know who those people are.
I love that. I love you saying I give people permission to, if you need to just throw some of that away, because that's where I know how that feels. And my husband and I felt there was it you
Guilt.
wouldn't think it, but there's guilt. There was a lot of guilt, at least for me, maybe not so much my husband. He was like, we don't, just get rid of it. He would do that with anything. But for me, and I was super close to her, it was really, I felt really, yeah, it was guilt. So I love that you say that, like, it's okay to let go of some of that stuff. Do you, to talk to me a little bit more, like, if somebody is, what advice would you give to someone who is feeling a little anxious about these types of things, overwhelmed just by the sheer volume of photos and videos and things that we can collect over the years? What kind of advice would you give there?
Yeah, if it's digital, I would say a lot of your items are that you may have backed up through the years could be duplicates.
Mm-hmm.
So, our
Ah.
process, whether we are advising our clients or whether we are working on their item, on their collection, is always the same. It always starts with gathering, whether it's analog or digital. And by analog, I mean, in terms of overwhelm, our process in approaching any project is pretty much the same, whether we are coaching our clients or we're working on their collection. We always start with gathering. So if it's analog, meaning the things that you can touch and feel, the albums, the loose photos, the slides, negatives, anything on tape, you gather everything in one place and you put the like for likes together. So you put all the videotapes together, and you may have different size videotapes or different format videotapes, and you put those together just so you can see what you have. And then you just kind of one bite at a time, if you're doing this on your own, you could be sending all your VHS tapes to someone local, um, or you could send it away. But just make sure you understand their process and how they are digitizing your items. So we follow the standard of the Library of Congress, which means that basically the scans and the what you get from us will be the absolute highest resolution possible. You'll never have to worry about digitizing your items ever again. But and so you do the tapes, and maybe after that you hit the albums, and which is exactly what we do first. We always hit the tapes first and then we hit the albums. And the reason why we do the albums first is because that has a semblance of organization to it. So someone along the way said, this is either this child's album, or it's this year or years of photos that we have. And so they've organized it somehow. And you could use that organization to, as you're taking things out of albums to have them scanned, you could use that organization to be able to rename the files so that you could see where they came from, which is our process. We rename and redate the files on the analog stuff so that it's not only searchable, but it's also sortable by date.
Okay.
Yeah, and in terms of digital, we have so many clients. We just picked up a client that had 7 terabytes of assets between his iCloud and his
Wow.
wife's, and then all the different backups that he's done over the years. And he got so overwhelmed trying to do this by himself. But, again, we start with gathering everything. Of course, I have a 96 terabyte RAID that I have the space to be able to accommodate 7 terabytes of duplicates. But it starts with something that it can hold, probably a 10 terabyte that can hold all of your assets. So you start dumping everything in there and you study where everything's coming from. And then you start taking out the duplicates and putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And of course, I'm simplifying it, but that is our approach with every project.
Wow. I love that. I guess starting with simple, right? Gathering and organizing so you know what's what. because that
Exactly.
can really feel overwhelming when there's so many things. And if you saw the bins that so I, full disclosure, I pitched so much stuff when I moved just because it was overwhelming. But the things that I kept, if you came into my storage room right now, hello, you would probably pass out because it's just random bins with pictures from my kids, pictures from like when I was in college, all thrown in one. Like there's no rhyme or reason. There's no way. As a matter of fact, I was trying to my brother just got married and I was trying to find some pictures for them because they wanted to do a montage. I couldn't find anything.
Mm,
I spent probably, I'm not kidding, on a Sunday 2 hours trying to find just a couple pictures of our grandparents. And I knew I had them and I ended up finding them. But to your point, if you have everything organized and concise, this is where what you do really comes in handy beyond, I think, not just being able to decrease your space, whether that's all the actual things that you have that you want to decrease or free up um, storage on your, technologically.
yeah.
But beyond that, just being able to reference it or that, because if it's there in a big pile, you might be saving it, but what can you ever do with it? You can't find
Exactly.
anything.
Yeah, you have to really, you really have to tackle the organization of it. Throw away the duds. You don't need any scenery shots from your childhood or from your early days. I know you went to Hawaii and I know the sky looked beautiful, but you don't need to be scanning that or keeping that photo even. We get caught up in the, taking photos of food. We see, of course, Thanksgiving just passed, and we see a lot of photos of, Thanksgiving food does not photograph very well. Everything
Oh,
looks like smushy and white.
yeah, you're right.
But it's a matter of becoming your own curator. It's a matter of really trying to save the best of. And I think the overwhelm comes in the mass amount of things that we have collected over the last 4 or 5 decades
Absolutely.
that we've been around. And it's just too much. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like for me, when I looked up at my own childhood, I'm the third child of four, and my mom basically just had one album for me, and it's fine. Like I don't need a million pictures of myself, and it makes it more digestible to have like
Mm-hmm.
10 pictures a year that were actually professionally shot, which was
Yeah.
great. Somehow those black and whites, and yes, I am dating myself. Those black and whites hold up really nicely over time, but we just have too much stuff and it's not organized. So it just takes some boxes, bring some boxes, and start throwing the 40s in the 40s box, 50s, 60s, 70s. So at least you have that level of organization,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not, scanned yet.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we think a lot. I mean, just as a general rule of thumb in life with everything, we have too much stuff.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to a certain age because you just accumulate. Unless you're somebody that's going through things like if Dr. Lynn was on the call, she'd be like, not me, because literally she's cleaning out a closet every week and just dumping. She doesn't like to have a lot of stuff. But to your point, I think we at least for me, I think about like, oh, I've got to clean out my clothes closet. I've got all this stuff that I don't need, but I don't know that we necessarily think, unless we're going to do a move or something like that, about all of the photos and the trinkets or the artwork from our kids or different things that we really do have too much of. And I really love the point that you bring up because they can be very meaningful if they're accessible. I think that's what I was going for is if you have, and I mentioned this earlier, but I have 3 boys who are not so much into like looking at things like that anyway. But for sure, if I put out a big bin of things that I wanted to go through with them, they are not going to sit down and do that. On the other hand, if I had a like concise little organized one album or one something we could look through on the computer that was just of them together or a certain period, wow, I think they would take the time to do that. And I think it would be very meaningful and powerful for all of us.
Yes, I have found with my clients' children, if they're under the age of 8 or 9, they love going through photo books.
Mm,
Because we can make photo books even for 3-year-olds where it's like thick
really?
pages and they can. get a dirty, it doesn't matter, like we could use sort of a cheap and cheerful way of producing it,
Mm-hmm.
so they can just
Mm-hmm.
kind of see. We've done legacy photo books for kids where it's like, that's grandma and that's grandpa, and grandpa's in heaven, so they
Oh.
can understand who their family members are. They love it. But around 8 or 9, just developmentally, they start getting a little embarrassed. Like I noticed that with my 9-year-old nephew over Thanksgiving. I made a video of his first year. I cut it with some photos just so the family can see. And I was trying some new technologies out that day. I was like, let me do this, and he just got so red. He goes, "Okay, I'm gonna go outside now." And I thought, like, he used to love looking at his videos. And my sister, who's a therapist, explained like that is a developmental thing, and they start getting embarrassed, and then they sort of don't really care about that stuff
Mm.
until they're a little bit older, until they're, sort of 15 or 16. And then they start, I think all the kids really, really love looking through photo books. So whatever, if you do nothing else with your photos, make an annual album of just your journeys with your family, the vacations that you've gone on and all that stuff. It's really,
I
it's
love
really
that.
great.
Yeah, so to your point, my mother-in-law, who I mentioned, I can't believe I'm talking about her so much today, but she used to every year, she would take pictures that she collected that either she took, she always had her phone in her hand taking pictures, or pictures she'd get up off from like our social media that we dumped, anything she could collect from the whole year. And at Christmas every year, she gave us a photo album that she had done that was the highlights. So I've got like, until she passed away, a stack of them, and they're hardbound and they're beautiful. But the problem is, I'm just not in, like, that's, I love it, but it's not me. Like, I just don't, I won't take the time to do that. It's not fun for me. No slouch to you because I know you enjoy it, but I want the product. I just don't want to take the time to do it. So I'm assuming that Picturely could help even with that, right? Like,
Yeah.
walk me through a little bit of what your process is, because it really is an amazing thing to have. And my boys still look at it. I have them, up on, they're not in storage. They're out where people can access them and look at them.
Absolutely. I mean, and we're not alone. There's many people who will, of course, we do a lot of photo albums for clients, and a lot of our clients just want photo albums. That's all they
Mm-hmm.
want. But of course, we can't just do a photo album without organizing and sort of curating.
Sure.
We have a lot of receipts and credit cards and things in there that is not going to end up in a photo album. So we do still have to download all the assets and go through and clean it up, so we can see what it is that really highlights that family's adventures for the year to be able to do a photo book. But yeah, we do a lot of photo books for our clients, and it's the best thing. It's interesting because we talked about this on the pre-call, that we advise all the analog to become digitized, and we advise all the digital to become tangible, to
Mm.
become something that we can touch and feel. Like, I still like to read books and smell that paper, when have that kinetic memory of reading a book and where I was. If you read it on your phone, you're almost like, first of all, there's so many distractions on the phone and on other devices. But when you're reading a book, no, nothing is popping into your book to say,
Mm.
hey, look at me now. So it's the same thing with photo books. Like, we can really just sit down and go through, and when you have 10 years or 20 years or a whole lifetime of photo books, you're able to just pull that off the shelf and really able to look through it. But yeah, that is absolutely something that we do for our clients.
I love that. And I will tell you once again, I referenced that I moved in the spring, and a lot of what we do on social media for our community is happening in real time with things that we're going through, because moms in this phase of life, we all share very similar common like struggles or things that we're dealing with. And I had done a post about, with actually a big bin in front of me, going through it and like the tear jerking moments, and it struck a chord with so many moms. Were like, I can't even, either they were like, I've done it, I did it with my kids, we laughed, I cried, I this, I that. But some of them were like, outright, I just will not touch them. They're sitting in a corner because it just brings up too many emotions. It makes me too sad. I can't even. So I feel like, for a mom who's feeling that way, which there are many of us, you're providing a really great service too, because you're allowing them to get the organization they probably need and get to a place where they can enjoy it without feeling too sad. Not that it's, I don't want to say sad because we're all grateful for what we had, but it's a little nostalgic and somewhat sad sometimes too, you know? So,
Yeah. I mean, and let's not forget kids' art. I think a lot of moms feel
yes.
super guilty about what do I do with my kids' art? They were, yeah, and we do have a lot of little artists in families,
Mm,
like actually like good stuff, not just the take the paper plate, put some feathers on it, and you know, that's the thing. That's the turkey art that
right.
but there are a lot of really beautiful art that we incorporate in the photo books, but there's also um, services out there where you could send your kids art to. There's one that's called Archive with a
Mm-hmm.
K,
Mm-hmm.
that you can send your kids art to, and you get a photo book back. And I don't think they send the artwork back. I think they discard the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
um just a quick note about that particular service is that what you get back is not a non-archival album, so in time you will lose the colors essentially of the book that you get
Oh,
back, and that might not matter to some people because the service is really reasonable in terms of pricing, and it's just something that at least they have something, right?
yep.
And something is better than nothing. And yes, I am a huge advocate of creating more space. I really believe that the more space that we have, and I'm talking about actual space, the
Yep.
more space we have in our home, and of course also in our head, the clearer we can live and think and be more productive. So yeah, I mean, if that helps create more space, because you have so many bins of children's artwork, you should check out Archive.
Yeah, I appreciate that's a really nice tip to give our moms. And you're not wrong. We've actually talked about this, Lynn and I, on past podcasts, that one big thing you can do for stress management is to free up your space. Because if your space is cluttered, your mind is probably far more cluttered too. So it can be very freeing and almost cathartic as the kids grow up and move on to sort of empty your space of some of those things. It's like a new, almost like a metaphor for a new start, right? Clean up
Yeah.
space to bring new things into your life. So,
Yes. I mean,
um,
as the kids grow up and go out of the house, it's devastating because so much of our identity is attached to being a mom.
mhm,
And so when they leave, it's kind of leaves our limbs hanging in a way, like, okay, what
yeah,
now? And to reduce the clutter in our house really does create a new sense of moving forward.
mhm. Yeah, and it's one of those, it's just something that you can actually have control over. I think we get stressed out in life very often because we want to control the things that we have no control over. But when you focus in on, sometimes it's small things like, let me get my things organized and my act together, within my home. And when you focus on those controllable things, it makes a big difference on the things that are out of your control. So I love that.
Definitely.
Can you walk me through like what it looks like? So say it was me last year and I reached out to your company to, Picturely, right?
Hmm.
And I had all of these bins of photos that I had.
Hmm.
And I wanted to get them digitized, organized, shrunk down. What would that process look like for me
Yeah, I
or
would
for
say.
anybody that's listening?
Yeah, yeah. We will send you some prepaid or um, you pack everything up as
Yep.
tightly as possible in
Yep.
boxes and
Yep.
ship that over to us, and we will meet with you for a couple of hours. We call that our discovery session. And we essentially start every single project, digital or analog, with a family tree so that we can understand when you were born, when your husband was born, and when we see a picture of you when you were 5, we know exactly what year to put that in, because we do organize everything chronologically. And the reason why we do that is so that you're able to get your assets back in a chronological order, but also when we digitize it, we rename and redate the files based on that chronology, so that when you put it in your iCloud, you're not getting like 10,000 scans or whatever it is that you
Yep.
have all coming up in December of 2024, right? It'll
Yep.
be like 1980 something, 1990 something. um but that's it. I mean, honestly, like, I have many clients who I've never even talked to before. They pack their
Wow.
stuff and they're very busy individuals. And we create a Google Doc for them to say, who are these people? Because we see a lot of their faces. And so that we can match them up to the family tree,
Mhm.
and then we get going. And we have done this so many times for hundreds and hundreds of clients that we don't really need a lot of time from our clients to be able to really do a nice job for them.
That's amazing. But there is, and when you say that you meet with them at the start, if they wish, I'm assuming that's virtual, right? You hop on a call and figure out what's what and just sort of get a baseline so you know which direction to head in.
Exactly.
So
And
it's,
there's different ways of, categorizing it. We could stay very general and we could just dump everything in a decade, or we could go really specific. And that all depends on their budget. And if you think about your own box of photos, if you were to just put things in decades, you'll probably be able to finish things in a day or two. But
yeah.
if you want to dive in a little deeper on a particular decade, sometimes it really doesn't matter for the earlier stuff, like the 40s and 50s. You're not going to have that much stuff. But starting in the 70s, you could have a lot of assets depending on if your family was large and if everybody had a camera in their hand. And
Yeah.
you could get a lot of things. And what's really fun about 60s, actually starting to late 50s through 70s, is that a lot of those square photos have the dates on the front of the
Oh,
photo,
yeah.
and that's really fun. So you can, again, it's always done in chunks. Give yourself some grace, put
Hmm.
them in bins of decades, and then go through the decade, and then you can put them in years.
Yeah. Man, that was, you've really got my head spinning because this is like, I would love to gift this. This would be a great gift for my parents. My parents are both still living, and my dad always had, remember those big, like VCR when the cameras first came out? It was always on his shoulder every vacation. At Christmas and holidays, it would be on a tripod, just taking
So great.
footage of. And he
Uh,
actually came up to, and he spends, can I tell you the amount of time he has spent just sitting at his computer trying to figure out what's what? This would be a fabulous gift for him, for both of them.
yeah.
It's really a great idea. I'm assuming you're not, and you mentioned you're not just doing photos, you'll do video footage. I mean, you
Oh
could
yeah,
do the
absolutely.
whole.
Yeah, I mean, to give you a little bit of a glimpse of how deep we can go, we just got a client who unfortunately lost her son at the age of 21 in
Oh.
2002, and it
Mm.
was just way too devastating for her to go through. I mean, she only had one. She has one daughter who's still with us, luckily, but she only had one son, and he was a prolific video. He just, everywhere he went, he took a video camera with him. And this was his college years, and like
Mm.
he was like doing this bromance stuff with his friends, and there was a lot of footage in there that I know he would not want his mom or dad to see.
Uh,
And that's where we come in, right? So we can advocate for our clients. And so I called her up. I said, I can give you everything. You're not going to want to see a lot of stuff with him sitting around with his friends, like um, drinking until they're blitz
sure.
out of their mind, or
Yeah.
just talking smack. You're not going to want to see that. And she goes, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm. She
And
doesn't
so,
want to remember him that way.
exactly. And so we were able to curate for her all that out. And of course, she still has the video, the tapes. I don't think she'll ever go back into them because now she has a library. But we can really step in and curate based on certain hardships, which, as we all know, to be human is to have trauma.
Sure.
But we can really tell the story in the best way, in the kindest way possible.
Yeah, I love that. What a gift you're providing for people, really. I mean, it really is because you can't, you're basically, you are giving the gift of curating your memories. And I don't think there's anything more special than that, than the memories we have. I mean, we love all the stuff that we buy. It's the holiday season and we're buying more stuff that we probably don't need. I'm the first one to admit it. But you can't put a price on the, you can't put a price on the memories and the things that you've done in your family history and time spent with loved ones. And I know for me as a mom, and I'm sure our listeners would agree, that in this phase of life, you see how fast it all goes. And if you could just have a moment to go back to that time when your kid was little at the Christmas tree and opening up the whatever it was, or getting the cookies for Santa, or just snuggling up on your lap, so you curating those things and putting it in a way that's accessible for people is really, really quite a gift. It really is something special. What a cool thing that you're bringing
Thank
to
you. Yeah,
people.
it really is great. And I have to say, it's so much easier for someone else to curate your stuff than you. I mean, my husband and I went to Cuba and Mexico City for 3 weeks at the end of 2015. And when I got back, it was his iPhone, my iPhone, and a camera. I took a camera with me, and it was so overwhelming. I was like, I don't know which one of these photos I want to keep. So I literally put one of my employees on it. I'm like, I don't know, you curate for me. It's just
It's
so much easier. You get caught in the memory, and oh my god, I remember that particular, but yeah, it's much
it's
easier
true.
for someone else to do it.
You know what? To your point, that's so true because number one, we go away, and Lynn and our family has been going on trips. We take our kids, our husbands, we all go on a big trip in the summer. We've been doing it for years. And I come home with, first of all, why do I take 4 and 5 pictures of the exact same,
Everything.
like me and the kids? There's 5 pictures for me to choose from. Why did I do that? Because then I can't decide which one's better. And secondly, I take pictures of landscape and monuments and whatever, like I'm a professional photographer, and none of it looks as good as I think it does. And then after the fact, what are you doing with it anyway? So to be able to send that off to somebody and I can actually go back and revisit those in a good way. Otherwise, they just sit and take up space on my phone, frankly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Should we talk about some strategies?
Yes, please. I'm talking your ear off. Go.
Let's talk about some strategies, because
Yes.
we all have a mobile phone, and it's
Yep.
probably, the latest and greatest for most people. Mine
Yep.
is actually from 2011, and it's still amazing. I have an iPhone 13 Pro, and it still works. But so one of the strategies is to make sure the 3 lenses, or however many lenses you have on the back of your phone, those are your camera lenses, and they are dirty because you're holding your phone and you have
Mm.
kids and you're here and there, and you have makeup on your face and everything, and you're cooking and whatever it is that you're doing. Make sure you clean it with whatever you're wearing that is cotton. Just clean the camera lens. That's number one. And if you're taking selfies, the one on the inside, clean that before every image. Be intentional and clean your camera lens. That's one. The
Oh,
second
that's
thing
so
is,
good.
this is easier said than done, especially if you have little kids, because they move around and you say cheese and they give you that funny, like just teeth, sort of a cheese face. And you really want them to start really smiling organically. If they are with you, start tickling them and take those shots. And there's a great feature on both Android and on iPhones where you could take bursts, but you do have to go into settings and turn that on, and it's like the volume up button, I think. And
Okay.
you could take a lot of bursts, but be intentional, because you're paying for the storage in the cloud. But go through your bursts and just take 1 or 2 of those images that really turned out nicely. So the and then in terms of cleaning up, the one of the quickest strategies that I have is, instead of doom scrolling online, which we all do because it's fun
Yeah.
and we just want to get away from whatever life is presenting to us.
Numb our brain a little bit.
But this is kind of fun and it's not overwhelming. But take whatever date you're listening to this, or whatever date you want to do this, and carve out half an hour. Just go to that date in different years.
Mm.
Particularly, go to the earliest possible, because it's the farther away you are from photos, the easier it is for you to curate out. And go through those days' photos and just start deleting things. Start deleting the food shots and the monument shots and things like that. And if you do this 365 days in a row, 15 minutes a day, your library will be totally clean. And I know
Mm.
it's easier said than done, but that is a strategy that we could adopt.
That is it's a simple thing, but it's so wise and so good because, yeah, I mean, if you saw what was on my photo, you would probably cringe in my photo section of my phone. That's a great tip. All of those tips are really great and very practical. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something I like to do too at the end of the year is go through my photos, take a couple of hours and just really hold space to be really grateful for the year that went by.
I do that
I
too.
typically do that on the first or the second, or sometimes depending on what I'm doing the 31st, whatever, during the day. But it really is, there's something to be said for taking a moment to be grateful for what you've done and to reminisce about the year that's behind you and look forward to what's ahead. But going through your photos and just bringing to mind, it's a powerful way to remind yourself of everything you've accomplished, everything you've done, all the memories that you've made, and things you can be grateful for through the year. So I love to do that as you start a new year. And that would be a great opportunity too to delete some things if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm actually working on some workshops to teach people on how you can actually cut a video on your phone. I use an iPhone, so I'm mainly concentrated on that. But you know,
Okay.
we all have access to iMovie and iCloud. Hopefully, you have iCloud. So do have some clients who don't want any other stuff on the cloud, so they don't have it. But
Mm,
the two different programs really speak well to each other, and I figured out a really quick workflow to be able to really cut like a 10-minute video of either a child or your memories of the year with some videos and photos. And yeah, I'm working on that workshop. So if you're listening, you can sign
yes.
up on our website to not only receive a 7-step guide, which I'm sure you guys are going to put that in the show notes, but you know,
Absolutely.
when you were sort of entered into our newsletters, which I do all the newsletters when I have time,
Hmm.
you'll be able to receive some information on our upcoming workshops.
That's great. I was just going to say, when you do the workshop, definitely let us know and we'll let our listeners know, because I'm sure a lot of them, I might be interested in that too, actually. So
Sure,
maybe I will
absolutely.
join. That would be great. That's amazing. I think what, did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to add before we start to wrap things up here?
I think we covered a lot of bases. I
Hmm.
will just say that, you know, please give yourself grace. I think that this, you know, going through memories is highly emotional and highly overwhelming.
Mm,
Do it with a friend. I think it's really great to be able to have a partner in crime, someone who can come in and, you know, you guys can help each
that's
other,
great.
because it's if you have someone that's not attached to the memories, they're able to help you get through things much
Mm,
faster. And then get your elders involved. Please ask them questions. Do your family tree. You know, it's they want to be. You know, they're just sitting around. They want to be able to help. I always sort of ask our clients if I can, you know, FaceTime if it's available to them,
hmm.
call or FaceTime or Zoom with them if they know how to do that. So that I can show them stuff, and they get so excited, and they're able to really help us with dating things, with showing us who the people are. So there's always a holiday around the corner, and hopefully you are seeing the elders. And if you are, um, get them involved. And you know, my last thing is be curious with the elders and ask them questions. We all have a camera in our hand. You can all start asking some legacy questions of them, like what their
Mm,
earliest childhood memory was, and just tape that. Just have that in your phone, you know, and just be curious and start wondering what life was like when they were in their 10s and
mm.
20s and teenagers and things like that. I
Oh.
mean, these are the things that really bring us closer to our heritage and to where we come from, and sort of why we chose this human experience.
Oh, that's such a great place to land. It's so good. And it's so true. That's such a, they do want to talk. If you have elderly loved ones, it's as much a gift for you because you're learning and connecting with them as it is for them because they want to share those things. It's such a meaningful thing. It really is. So and then to take it a step further and tape it, so you have that conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And you have their face, and you know, you can see their
yeah.
expression as they're talking about it. I sometimes am discreet. My dad's 97 and he still has a
Wow.
lot of life left in him. And he'll just like start talking about some things that happened to him when he was like 25. And sometimes it's a not repeated story. A lot of times they are repeated stories. But sometimes I'm like, wait, this isn't interesting. And I have a little shortcut on my phone where I can just turn on that uh, audio recorder immediately, and I just put
Hmm.
it right in front of them. It's not as distracting as a video, because they want to
Sure.
be all like, wait, am I on camera? But it's just you have their voice and that story.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I want to ask you two small questions if it doesn't put you too much on the spot before we wrap up. But before I do that, I just want to go back to the very beginning and point out to our listeners something you said, because I think it was so powerful when you talked about sort of shifting from what you were doing in the big world of advertising into running your own business and starting your own thing. And what you said that I think was so powerful for a lot of women, because a lot of us right now and a lot of our listeners are thinking about what they want to do next, and they want to recreate their life a little bit or redefine. And I love that you said, when you talked to your life coach, she said, what is it that you like to do? And that you were able to take something that was you were doing without being paid for it, without it being a business, doing it for yourself, for your friends, for your family, and you were able to take that and find a really amazing way to not only give back to other people and give them such a gift, but also for yourself. That's just, I hope you all heard that and heard how you talked about that, Hele, because it's really powerful, and it's really important to remember that it's okay to think outside the box, and it's okay to do what you love. It's okay to, you
That's right.
should. Like, I think we feel like work has to be work. It doesn't have to be. It can be something that you love. And if you find that thing, boy, it really just changes your life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And we all have a zone of genius.
Yep.
We all have something that we're really good at, but we all have something that we really love to create. As
Yeah.
women, we receive to create, right? We are organic creators in this realm. So it's really important for you to constantly ask yourself, what do I need to receive today to create X, Y, and Z, right? What do I
That's
need to
great.
receive to create my next phase? What do I
That's
need to
great.
receive to create calm now that my kids are going? And it's a really powerful question to ask on a daily basis.
That's great. So that was a perfect segue, because the first question I was going to ask you is, what can you share one of your favorite stress management or self care things that you do to remain calm in this phase of life? We love to give our listeners little tips from time to time. And that's a big one for us, because there's, especially during the holiday season. So is there something that you really love, stress
Um,
management or self care?
yes, well, first of all, I go for walks. I think keeping your body moving is really, really important. Um, but, and that's on a sort of an executional level, just exercise, keep your body moving. And on a spiritual level, I really do believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And all the good and the bad is here for us to learn from, our
Mm.
spirits to learn from. I really believe that. So when I'm going through a stressful time, I just have to take a deep breath and go, okay, even if I don't know what I need to learn from this experience today and right now, I know that this is happening for me and not to me.
Mm.
And that really helps me to calm down. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things that can happen to us that are beyond even going through
Sure.
this. Obviously, the death of a child is the worst thing that can ever happen
Sure.
to anyone. And I don't want to make it seem like that's happening for you,
Sure.
but even in that, there are so many lessons to be learned on how we show up for ourselves and for our families and for our community and for the world. Like, how did that affect us and who we truly are? So yeah.
That's a great tip. Second question. Um, you mentioned that you are a heart mom. I would love it if you could share maybe one little tip or piece of advice with connecting with, I'll say, adult kids, or the 20 to 18 to 20, early 30 something crowd, that you could share with us, something that you find that works really well in communicating or connecting, or anything that you would like to share, just one small thing.
Yeah, as a heart mom, I always really made space. My heart daughter's Paige, and she actually works for me, which is great. I mean, I'm really
That's
lucky
awesome.
that Paige is my people, and sometimes you can have a bio mom or dad that's not your people, and that's
Hmm.
that's another lesson in life. But I'm lucky that she's my people. But I've always really created space for her mom, whose name was Judy, to be something that everyone is really comfortable talking about in our household. I never was very jealous of when any. In fact, always tell Judy's story, which I'm not going to go into here, but she was a really incredible human, and
Mm.
she was a public defender that won every case, and she defended
Wow.
children from going into adult prison. Just like that's
Wow.
the quick version of why she was incredible. So I honor her spirit and I honor her memories, and so that's kind of how I deal with being a heart mom. I think it's really important for us to always give homage to our ancestors, no matter if whether they're ours or not.
I love it. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. It has been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you'll come back because I feel like I could talk to you for another couple hours.
I know.
So definitely you'll have to come back and visit us and chat again. And ladies, if you're listening, I really hope that you'll check out Picturely. I'm definitely going to. The service sounds amazing. She is on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Picturely. You can also find them on the website picturely.com. That's PICTURLI.com. And if you want the 7-step guide that she was talking about, it's the website picturely.com/connect. And all of this will be linked in the show notes. And if you get our newsletter, we'll have it in the newsletter for you as well. But it's definitely worth, I mean, listen, anything that we can do to minimize our stress, to hold on to our memories, and to create more space in our homes and then therefore our minds is a really good thing. And this, I just think, this is just a fantastic thing you're doing. And
Thank
what
you.
a picture that you're giving us of what's possible if we want to, of course, redirect, right? So
Exactly.
thank you for that too, and thank you for sharing.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate it.
Yes. Absolutely.
Another question, Halil, that it's really important for our listeners because most of us are avid readers. So, do you have any book recommendations or something that you're reading that you really love right now or something that was impactful to you?
I do. I have two actually. One is from actually the life coach who I worked with. Her name is Andrea Quinn,
Okay.
and her book is on Amazon. It's called the Quinn Quinn Essentials for Women: 9 Transformational Tools to Accomplish Anything. And this is the sort of course I went through in helping me really create the business that I have right now, which was really powerful. Another book is if you want to tackle the photo organizing on your own. Kathy Nelson is the founder of the Photo Managers, and and her name is Kathy, Cathi Nelson, and it's Photo Organizing Made Easy. And that is also on Amazon if you want to
Oh,
sort of tackle this on your own.
that's amazing. And I thank you for sharing that. And I will link those in the show notes as well, ladies. So you'll be able to find that there and I'll put them in the newsletter. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being with us, Hale. And thank you, ladies, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to chat. Make sure that you're following us on all of our feeds: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, if you prefer to watch. The website is www.lifeafterkids.com. We've got all kinds of great free resources over there for you. I hope you have a fabulous day and an even better week. Yeah, that was great.